ain't going back. Not gonna buy into all that. Hey, ain't gonna hide. Gonna let all the fears slide. Got Mother Nature is on my side. Got all of the loving growing inside.
Hello, everyone. Welcome again to our new now. I am delighted to once again be talking with Yummy Doctor Amandha Vollmer. It's been a little bit. Amanda, how are you today?
Yeah, it's been a bit. Doing okay, making some things today and just being creative. And it's snowing. We're in the midst of winter. So you can ice skate and you can shovel and you can go for some walks with your snowshoes. But in Canada, they've locked us down again. Not that it really affected my life anyway, but it's some strange times we're in, that's for sure, but I'm doing all right.
Happy to hear that. Yeah, it's really strange. It depends on the part of the world you're in. They're approaching staying healthy or unhealthy in varying degrees of sanity or insanity, as the case might be. And, leads us to today's topic. We're talking on staying healthy during challenging times. Perhaps we can approach this from a 3-point perspective, Amanda. Maybe we could talk about the body and then mind and then energy or spirit as the ways that you have found, as you say, during the winter, especially in Canada, and the craziness going on, how to stay healthy. Maybe we can start with the body, the easy part, maybe for most of our viewers to follow along with.
Yeah, well, it depends on where people are at, where they start, and everyone has to have a desire to want to improve themselves and to seek knowledge and to reflect upon their behaviors and their habits, and also to have some sense of self-discipline in that. And it can be challenging when you're not well. If you're fatigued, generally when you're not feeling the best, you don't have a lot of motivation or a lot of energy. And so where everybody's at, they have to find some sort of thread they can begin to pull to get a bit of a run on entering the the part where they have to do the work, because it is work. And I usually suggest to people who don't know where to begin to first just take a strong look at their lifestyle, because it doesn't come from disease doesn't come from some floating particle randomly, and which is really, that's really been a scapegoating method for humanity for quite some time, that somebody else got me sick, or this invisible thing got me sick. It wasn't me or my behavior, it was somebody else. So it's really, step one is taking full responsibility for where you're at now with your health, and then looking and assessing your lifestyle, and not from blame or shame or any of that, just neutral. Where are the poisons coming into your life? And so I usually suggest people start with their pantry and their food. What in their pantry do they go to? What do they eat over and over again on repeat? Is it white bread? Is it margarine? Or is there some seed oils they shouldn't be cooking with? And are there certain foods they're buying that they're not sure how much they're sprayed or injected or laced with fluoride or some other chemical, and begin to move into a healthier option of that food source. And that can be challenging in and of itself, especially the way that our world has been so separated from each other. Food and meals and meal prep used to be a family event or a community event, and you'd have a garden and you'd grow your food and you'd collaborate and you'd share and you'd put down food for the winter or whatnot. And we've lost that connection to the earth and to ourselves ultimately by just going to the grocery store. There's been stories about the grocery stores having shortages, and now our truckers are on strike and all of this sort of thing. So, now's the time to, instead of being fearful of that, take charge of your food and get it closer to home as much as possible, whether you have a specific diet, whether you don't eat meat, whether you do, whether you like the dairy products or not, or you're sensitive or have food sensitivities to certain things. That's also a feedback if you're sensitive to certain foods. And that means there's an issue in the gut where it's telling you, stop, don't give me that anymore, because it congests the liver, and we need the liver as the main organ to function pretty much everything in the body. So assess yourself, assess what your food sensitivities are, your likes and dislikes, your food habits or addictions. And then just make a list. And then each week, or whenever you go shopping, or whenever you want to make that change, just substitute one thing out for another. So substitute something with white sugar for, say, maple syrup or honey as a simple exchange. Or find something that's, if you like treats, because we're so trained to we have to have desserts and we have to have treats, and I worked so hard, so now I have to reward myself by poisoning myself with junk. Think about those parts of your mind where you actually are hurting yourself when you think you're rewarding yourself. And then talk to your family about it. Maybe get your family on board. Especially if you have a spouse or children, and that's going to be difficult if you start changing your food and they don't want that, or they're not ready for that. So it's another consideration, but at least switch out chemicals for actual nutrition. And then I suggest looking at other areas in your lifestyle where you're bringing in a chemical. So whether it's cleaning products, whether it's what you're washing your clothes with, washing your hair with, your body with, all of those things. Is it, questionable? Is it synthetic? Is it potentially toxic? And how could you change that into something simpler? I mean, I basically clean with vinegar, baking soda, and an unscented natural soap. You can pretty much clean almost everything with just those few products. You don't need all the fancy schmancy sprays and goops and things. And then with the body care, there's so many chemicals put in body care, and your skin is a two-way organ. You absorb almost everything you put on your skin, and you really want to watch where you're adding chemicals into your body. And what's interesting is when you poison yourself like that, it changes the way you taste and smell. Because I notice people who constantly have the dryer sheet scent on them, they can't smell that anymore. It's denatured for them, but not for other people. So those fragrances are constantly challenging your body. So, your organ of skin is here to regulate temperature and to make sure that things that are supposed to get in do, and things that are supposed to come out do. It's a regulatory organ, and is one of the biggest organs of elimination as well. And so you don't want to clog up the pores with these types of petrochemicals. And there's so many beautiful things on the market now. I mean, that's one of the things I focus on making are natural products that aren't full of all these parabens and other toxins. So, if you're on Pinterest, maybe you like that sort of a thing, you can search for, unscented or natural products and start pinning on a board, if that inspires you to look elsewhere for holistically minded products. And the bonus is it's not just good for you, it's good for the earth as well. So, as you start to change over, you begin to feel more inspired, that you're doing good things and that you're helping not only yourself, but, other life. And we want to support life as much as possible. And that's really a goal. So find out where the chemicals are coming in. And even with water, make sure the water is you're not drinking tap water or anything like that. You've got good solid filtration system, or you're getting it from the spring. I go to my spring to get my water. And really looking hard at, are you drinking pop? Are you drinking coffee? Where are you stimulating yourself to stay awake because you're tired all day long? That sort of thing. And then once you've done that, then you can start to see where your own system, your own body is not strong. So do you have a thyroid issue? Do you have a skin rash? Do you not sleep at night? Do you have depression? Like what is your body telling you right now about your health? And you don't need to go to anyone to really learn. That's what they've entrained us with, that we have to go to some sort of expert to understand our bodies. But you can actually learn very simply by doing a little bit of research how your body works and how to increase nutrition. If you don't think you can get the nutrition up through your food because maybe your digestion is not ample, or maybe you have an inflammatory condition, then you can start to look at maybe a couple of supplements that you may want to work with for a little while to build up those systems, to build up those nutrients in the body, looking at both minerals and vitamins. And maybe it's herbal medicine you'd like to work with. Maybe that's how you want to get your vitamins and minerals. So you can begin to experiment with whatever is locally growing around you, and make into teas, or you can get fancy with it and start to bring in other things and make blends and that sort of thing. But get creative with how you're bringing in nutrients. You want a lot of diversity in your diet. And then when you've figured out what maybe is going on with your body a little bit, okay, it looks like for me, I have a skin issue. And if you watch some of my videos, I always take it back to the Chinese medicine interconnection between all the organs. You can even pull up like an emotional organ chart from traditional Chinese medicine that shows you your emotional state related to organs. So you can find which major organ are your weakest in your body, and then start to fortify those with this certain types of foods, certain types of supplements, and other regimes like exercise, breathing, grounding. What's exciting about holistic approaches to health is there's plenty of options. Whatever suits your life and what you feel called to will serve you. So it doesn't have to be just one thing or two things. Definitely doesn't have to be pharmaceuticals. And you can really make huge improvements just with things like magnesium or vitamin C levels to support the liver, for example. Speaking of medications and drugs, that's another thing to assess. Are you on any medications? Are you taking, any acetaminophen or things like that when you have a headache or whatnot? Well, what can you do instead? Like you can do DMSO for pain instead. Or maybe you just need magnesium and that's why you get the headache. Or maybe you're just simply dehydrated and you don't drink enough water in your day. So find the simplest things first to rule out some of your issues. And then if you're on medications, maybe consult with your pharmacist on, what you're taking and your doses, because they know more than the MDs most of the time about the drugs, and what you could get either generic or what you could do to come off of it. And they will suggest to you how you would come off of that specific medication. Some they'll say, oh, that one's okay, you could just come right off it, or that has to come off very, very slow. So if you're on medications and you want to get off, you do have to have enough knowledge to do it safely and properly, because some drugs are very, very shocking to the body if you just stop them cold turkey, like thyroid medication, SSRIs, these sorts of things. So that's where you begin with looking at the bodily aspects of health. And also, are you sweating? Are you moving your body? Are you stretching your body? What is your regime that you're doing for your strength as well? Because we do lose muscle mass as we age. So are you doing a yoga sort of program, or are you walking every day? Are you getting enough sunlight on your skin? Are you getting fresh air? Are you just sitting in front of screens all day? So it really it's just turning in on yourself and having a really fine look at your life and what you can change that makes sense for you. If you don't have a lot of money, it doesn't have to be expensive. You could even fast and save yourself money on food for a little while you allow the body to purge wastes. You can look into all kinds of auto urine therapy, which I've done 2 videos on now. It's a simple way to cleanse. You just have to obviously read and learn how to do it properly. And you don't want to do it if you are taking medications without a lot of knowledge, because a lot of these drugs come out through the kidneys. So you don't want to shift your drug levels by doing so. But, it's free. It's your own perfect medicine, as Martha Christie wrote. in one of her books about urine therapy. So then there's things like enemas. Those are very affordable. You can do coffee enemas. I mean, there's as many enemas as there are herbs, right? So those can really assist with the bowels, the gut, and then specifically with coffee, helping to cleanse the liver and the blood. And, you can get really far doing these simple, basic things for your body. So that's sort of where I focus people as much as possible.
Sounds good. Obviously, if you're trying to save money, stopping a lot of the indulgences that cost extra than healthy foods, I like the fact that you've pointed out there's no excuses really. If you want to get healthy, you're willing to, look at yourself in an honest way. There's at least a dozen ways you just mentioned anyone can start.
Yeah. And if there are things that you're making excuses for, like alcohol or smoking or whatever, then just understand that you have a reason for why you're doing it. So acknowledge at least like step one is acknowledging, you're doing self-harm and you have a reason and a rationale for it right now. And that's okay. But the first step in any change is acknowledging that, and then just being self-loving and saying, well, I'm doing that right now because I'm really having a hard time coping and I don't have anybody else, in my life right now to help me cope or any other healthy coping mechanism. So that's why I'm doing this. But I do acknowledge that it's not the best way to cope. And so I will pray or I will meditate or I will, reflect and see if there's another healthy way that I can cope with what I'm going through right now. Maybe I need to talk to a friend, or maybe I need to journal, or maybe I need to do art therapy or go out and do forest bathing or something else when I feel a pull to do something that I would call self-indulgent, but really it's self-harming. And switch that out every now and again and see how you feel, and because we're all emotional beings and we have pain and we have suffering and there are things in our lives that have caused trauma and other things that we hold and we don't know how to deal with. So instead of actually, allowing it to come up and feeling the pain and feeling the discomfort, we'd rather suppress it and push it down and make it go away and distract ourselves in other ways, like through television watching, or there's books and books on addiction. So, I mean, there's any which way you can have an addiction,
Sure.
But realize that that's what you're doing. But the first step is just acknowledging you're doing it and then forgiving yourself for doing it. You're just trying to get by. You're just trying to do your best. You don't have another way right now. And this is all you can do in the moment. And so that's always step one. That's why I like the writing and the journaling a lot of the time, as a before bed habit. Just write, what happened in your day, or I didn't like how this happened today, or whatever, as long as you're expressing, because that's healing. Healing is the body expressing, and this continual homeostasis that it's always trying to maintain means that it's never static, it's always moving. So everything has to constantly flow and move. And if you're trying to suppress or stop or hold, then something's going to bubble up around that. And eventually that mechanism will fail, or your addiction won't serve you anymore, and you'll have to increase your amounts, and all of this sort of thing will snowball.
Yeah.
So that's very important.
Very sweet way to look at it. That, forgive yourself, understand what's going on. I've never quite seen it as gentle as that, which would have helped me years ago in getting through my own addictions, is, telling yourself I'm okay now because. And then, maybe the first step is just knowing that there can be another way after you, allow the reasons for why you're indulging in the first place to surface.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think
just like tremoring. I was just going to say, on my blog on yummy.doctor, I talk about trauma release exercises and how to get into a trauma release state by shaking the body. Oh. And the body will hold the chemicals of stress inside the muscle belly. And when you do this procedure, it helps the body actually shake off some of the trauma. People don't even know maybe what it was anymore. They've forgotten what the actual trauma was, but the body doesn't forget. And so if you can actually shiver it away, people report better sleep. They might have like a moment or a memory of that. Oh yeah, I remember that. And then it's gone from their life and it's not a burden to them anymore. And it can be as simple as just allowing the body to let go of the event that it's been holding. So we have so many beautiful and elegant ways to do this now. And so that would be one I would suggest everyone could benefit from the trauma release exercises.
Is that related to rebounding? I've heard, which kind of helps the body do that. Little trampoline moving, would that be part of shaking the body, do you think?
Well, this is a particular method that was studied to use the psoas muscle so you exhaust the psoas muscle until it actually begins to, it's a very low shake. So when you're rebounding, you're jumping, which is excellent for the lymphatic system and the muscles themselves. But this is more specific where it's involuntary. And so it's a deeper level of release than just, an exercise where you're doing so. But you can exercise yourself into a tremor. People who hold poses in yoga, for example, sometimes they'll shake. They might even be embarrassed they're shaking, but go with that, because that's actually a trauma release happening inside the muscle. So it's more of a lower level involuntary tremor.
Very interesting. Yeah, I found when I used to do more yoga that the tremors and like you said, you get a little embarrassed, but I didn't realize perhaps it's your body trying to get itself to a deeper meaning of what's going on, so you can address the issues that are being held, which perhaps is why when people get older, I'm finding they seem to be less flexible than children, right? And a lot of people will say, oh, I'm just getting older, but I found pretty much I call BS. I think it's just you're holding trauma and pain and what have you in your body, and you refuse for whatever reason to let it go. And maybe that is very much along the lines of what you just suggested, how to start feeling healthier.
Absolutely.
So it kind of brings us into the mind. I think we've kind of crossed some of the perspectives here. When you've jumped very well, I might add, from how your body can heal itself, to the mind and what's going on. And so if you're sitting with all of these challenges, or you're sitting in a stressful situation that people are sitting in, and they want to move and they're having trouble, what would you say could work as far as understanding the value in facing the pains that maybe you have to face to get over what it is you need to do to get healthy? Because maybe a lot of people are hesitating because of the initial pain that comes up, or the initial fears that come up with getting healthy, or even their denial that it's possible for them at their age, at their time in their life, at their their job. I've heard all the excuses as to why you can't get healthy. What would you suggest to some of those kinds of resistance?
Well, the mind is the gateway into your body ultimately, because it's really our reflections of our reality, because everything that we see in our reality is our own mind projection. So that's very important. It's vital, and it's a mind-body complex. So the things that you think and the things that you feel will translate into chemical messengers inside your body, which right there tells you how powerful we are. We know people that can will themselves into health with their thoughts, and can create cascades of positive outcomes through chemical messengers by chanting or repeating a certain phrase, or humming or toning, or any of those things that create vibration, and also a sense of belief that they are actually taking charge of their body. But the mind is really the hardest part, especially when there's really ingrained beliefs that are hardwired into the ego. And that, in my practice, that has always been the hardest thing, to convince someone, or to encourage them, or to undo the stories that they think are theirs. So there's really great workbooks that you can buy. There's one called Mind Over Mood. I love that workbook. And there's one also like an anxiety workbook. And there's these types of things that can help you get clear with yourself if you don't have anyone you can talk with who's trained in that sort of thing, or you just don't trust people enough to share, or you don't feel comfortable enough to share. Then you can get your own resource book and do those exercises yourself to, again, be your own doctor and self-reflect on what are your beliefs on these particular topics, and what are your stories that you continually tell yourself that hold you back from being your best self, or healing, or coming to terms with something. And so that's why I say, like, the writing or the reflection is really key, because ultimately you shape your own mind. there's influences that come in, and then you decide whether that influence is agreeable or disagreeable. So it's really your own gateway that is determining whether you want it to be real for you or not. And that means the power is still, you're in the driver's seat of all of that. So I usually suggest people to walk away from mainstream media, at least for 2 weeks, if they're consuming that still. Like, turn off the television, the radio, don't read the newspapers, turn off your phone, whatever you got to do to take yourself out of the dramas in your reality, or what you think is your reality, and just do like a detox, like a media detox, at least for 2 weeks. It usually takes 2 weeks to form a new habit, or to really get clean or clear enough to see. And then notice, like, how do you feel after 2 weeks of that? And if you go back into it, you might notice something. You might go, well, those are the same stories I was hearing 2 weeks ago. Nothing's really changed. It's the same dramas, or it's the same soap operas. And then once you're clearer with yourself, and you're not feeding yourself the beliefs or the thinking, your thinking begins to turn on. Your own mind begins to take charge, not what anybody else is telling you. And everybody wants to be their own king or queen of themselves, ultimately. Not everyone is a leader, in that way. People like to be led. They feel more comfortable in that. But still, even within that, you still have your own will. And you want to feed that and support that. So expressing yourself in some way is very good. And also, just like we stop the chemicals coming into the household for your body, stop the poisons coming into your mind in every which way. And maybe pick a couple of books that have piqued your interest about something, or maybe you want to just learn to meditate, or how to meditate, so that you can actually get quiet inside your mind, because really everything is within you. So if you can reflect inside, you get answers within yourself, and you begin to learn what that voice is, and trust that. And as you trust, it's almost like when you do dream journaling, you learn to, as you put more energy into it, it's like your mind's going, oh, you like that? You want that? Okay, let's do that more. And it becomes more ingrained as a neural net for you. And then as you feed it, it grows and becomes something foundational for you, that is a support network that you can, lean on when things are tough, or you can go to for seeking answers and clarity about something. I mean, we've lost contemplation, it seems, as a reality. Most people don't take time to actually sit without stimulation and contemplate, which is active thinking. And, that would be something you could do, like just write one point. Today, I would like to think about this topic, and just, take half an hour, put aside, sit in front of the fire or wherever you want to be, and reflect on that thought, and have a contemplation with yourself, and then, there's all sorts of mental exercises. There's even because of apps. And there's so much out there now for the mind. There's even music that has like 432 hertz or binaural beats, and these sorts of things that put your brain waves into different states, so that you can see differently, right? Because your eyes are literally brain matter. Your retina is back in your brain, and it puts things forward for you. So, you want to change that, you want to heal that, and you want to be able to see clear. So, those types of things, whatever calls to you, or whatever you feel driven to learn, or to go toward, that's, your own, again, empowerment, like, because you're doing it for you. But I find a lot of the issue is that people, they're good people who think that everything has to be about everybody else. Like, I see a lot of cancer cases like that, where they give and give and give and give, but deep down they actually loathe themselves. They hate themselves, and they feel like they have to punish themselves by serving others, and that, or they're in a religious ideology that says that they, must serve others to the neglect of themselves, though. And that's not really in balance, because really you are also a divine child of God, and you also need to learn how to love the self, because how are you going to really love anyone or love anything if you don't exude love, right? Eventually you'll dry up, and then what can happen is resentment and bitterness and and all kinds of other habits can take form because of that behavior. And we, so I see that in a lot of, mothers or fathers, so they have to take care of their children. So it's all about the children. Or you see it in people who they have a painful wound that they don't want to address. So then they're givers because they're doing it as a distraction, which I guess is a healthier addiction than, drinking or something like that. But still look at it that way and go, where have I closed off this part of myself? And that's part of the mind and the thinking as well, the way you think about what you do for others. And do you have healthy boundaries? Do you let toxic people into your life? Do you get taken advantage of because of your generosity? These sorts of things. So that's another contemplation point. And it's to be done with what I call this, not just me, but it's called the second attention, or developing the second attention, where you're simply just a witness to yourself, but you're an unbiased witness, meaning you're neutral. You're not making judgments about it. You're just noticing. So, I notice that you think that you're bad because of this thing that happened when you were a child. Or I notice that when someone calls you, you immediately drop what you're doing and you go off to help them. But then when you come back, you feel resentment because you didn't finish what you were going to do, whatever it is, right? So it's not judging like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have felt that way or thought that or whatnot.
Right.
It's just like a cataloging so that you're paying attention to yourself. So it's really about consciousness and the monkey mind, as it's called. I can't remember how many thoughts were said to have a day, and many of them are not even conscious thoughts. And so, this is a constantly ticker tape of verbiage in here. And peace is really in the moment and pouring the waters of consciousness on everything that you're thinking, and acknowledging that you are a man or a woman, you're a spirit in the flesh, and you're having an experience here for whatever reason you're not to know. And you need to have some sort of, you're meant to figure this out. You're meant to actually achieve something here of yourself. So really it's about minding your mind and trying to ensure that also you're thinking clearly. Like, there are supplements and things you can do for the mind too. Now, there's a strong connection between gut health and thinking as well that has to be acknowledged. So because it's a mind-body complex, we can't just ex-nay the whole body part of it. I see a lot of people with anxiety, depression, and all kinds of mind complexes. They tend to have their gastrointestinal system not quite where it should be. So, because a lot of the neurochemicals and parts of the brain are made in the gut, but also your digestion feeds the whole body. So you need to take a look at, maybe if you have depression or anxiety or something that is ongoing in your life, to address your digestion and your digestive system. And I think that's why a lot of monks and people, they do regular fasting as well, to cleanse the system, allow the digestive organs to rest and to do self-healing, because your whole body will heal itself if you allow it. And the same thing with the mind. And then, are you eating enough cholesterol? I mean, there's been this concerted effort to demonize a part of us as if it's bad. And your brain is mainly cholesterol.
Right.
And we don't eat enough of the right types of fats to fuel brain power as well. And so you want to look at, am I getting enough healthy fats in my diet? Am I digesting those fats? Do I have a gallbladder? So can I even digest the fats properly? These sorts of questions, right? There are things that are like psilocybin based that are really popular now that help to actually heal the hippocampus,
Really?
And the frontal lobe and the hippocampus, which hippocampus is responsible for a lot of memory. And so if you're having memory lapse or feel like your memory is faltering, you can use psilocybin microdosing to build it back as well. Things like ginkgo biloba, which you have to be careful because you can't take that on any medications. And St. John's wort is a nervous system support as well that can help with this, with like slight depression, that sort of thing. Again, cannot be taken with other medications. So there are many other options to have the mind working a little more sharply for you, because sometimes you can't actually decrease your stresses in your life, but you can actually increase your ability to cope with stresses, and they don't feel as stressful to you. And you're able to get out of the constant fight or flight, stimulate, the stimulatory action, rather than, calmly facing things and dealing with things in your life. I noticed there's this pattern where people, hit the coffee so they get the fight or flight, then they're like motoring through their day, and then they crash, around 2 or whatever in the afternoon when the caffeine drops, and then they either have to stimulate themselves with more caffeine, or they use sugar to try to get through that tired phase, and they're on this treadmill, and then they wonder why at night, then they have like a really starchy meal or a really carb heavy meal or whatever, and then they're not sleeping well at night, because their whole metabolic system has been thrown off by what they've been doing all day probably for years. So just even simply detoxing from some of these habits can get you back into a regulatory framework where you're sleeping deep, and that can affect the mind greatly. Obviously, if you're not sleeping, you're not recharging yourself. And that can help you get into a clearer thinking state so you can achieve whatever goal it is you're trying to optimize.
For sure. I mean, I've noticed since I've been living in Japan and eating way more fatty organ meat and having fermented foods just about every day, I've had, none of the problems I used to have when I had the kind of diets that you just mentioned, when I was, very busy and living in Toronto, kind of near where you're from and things like that, when, it maybe was harder or less promoted, fatty meats, fatty fish, harder to get, things like that. And so I guess it comes back to some of the supplements you had mentioned, the omega-3s and things like that, which could be helpful for people that, maybe that's a good place to start. If you can deal with the stresses better, then from there you could maybe find options to get away from the stresses.
Yes, exactly. That's why everyone's where they're at. Like, you have to just, admit to where you are, and then what are the things I need now so that I can assess my life and change my habits and get different foods and whatever. Because sometimes people just get so overwhelmed even thinking about it. So, okay, what can you now change in your life just quickly that can help you cope, so you can actually think and you can calm down enough to assess it properly without getting overwhelmed. And that sort of, like I was saying, magnesium, that sort of thing. I find most people are magnesium deficient. So usually just start with some magnesium, just apply it topically before you go to bed. Just start there, and then do that for a week, and then see how you're sleeping, see how you're feeling, and then take the next step. What's the next thing you could do? Like an omega-3 fatty acid, maybe it's a fish oil or an algae-based one or something, to get your fats up, which is a lot of fuel for the body, and maybe your energy you pick up, and you feel more motivated to make the other changes, right?
For sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, how would you get people on the willingness factor? Like the desire, I know you're laughing about that. It's true. It's like, there's any of these changes, and you've mentioned about 100 of them, which I've pretty much practiced all of them and found them all to be effective. Like they all work. But let's say someone's sitting, what would you do to encourage them to give up? Because generally getting healthy means giving up something that's unhealthy. Whether it's a job or a relationship, perhaps a favorite food, a favorite drug, any of those things, like you say, that are all perhaps coping mechanisms. And then the fears are going to be behind that wall, whatever it is they're holding back. So,
yeah, I mean, it depends on you as well. I mean, and your personality type. So for me, I'm not very competitive with other people, but I'm very competitive with myself. And so how I am motivated is I challenge myself. I say, oh, well, let's see if you can do this today. Or, what would you like to do today that's exciting? Or, I don't feel motivated today, so let's just push through this part right now. and let's see if you can catch onto a motivation, whatever it is. So it's really your personality, a lot of it. But if you want to substitute out, that's one thing. So say, well, like for example, people who drink beer, they like a beer. And so assess, why do you like a beer? People say, oh, when I come home from work, I'm so excited to go to the fridge and get a nice cold beer and sit down and just, watch whatever, do whatever. That's your thing that you do. Oh, now you're telling me I can't do that. Well, that was the only joy I had. You're taking away my only purpose in life, or whatever. So then say, okay, well, they make de-alkalized beers now, and some of them are really tasty. So if you're after the alcohol, then you have to admit you're after the alcohol. But if you're after the sitting down with a cold beverage, to relax, then you could easily substitute that out for a de-alkalized version and get the same type of experience without the self-harm. You know what I mean? So it would come down to really noticing those things and making a decision on a change you can make, or something else. Like say you like Doritos. I don't know who likes Doritos. I think they're disgusting. But anyway, that's the other funny thing about chemicals. It changes your whole palate. So once you start getting off it, those things are gross. I can't even stand the smell of them.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So once you start to change, everything begins to change for you. But say that's the thing you like or whatever. Well, why don't you buy an organic corn chip instead?
Sure.
Switch it out to a healthier version of the same habit. So you're not radically changing your behavior right now. You're just changing it up slightly, and you see if you can manage that and see how you feel on that. Now, if you're just going to go, well, I don't care, I like my thing, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Well, you're going to do what you're going to do. Then That's your ego, and you're stuck. And that's why it's that. I think the most difficult part about it is that nobody likes to suffer. Nobody likes to suffer. The irony is when you hurt yourself, you actually are suffering more, but you don't know it. And you think that if you're going to change that or get rid of that thing that's actually making you suffer, you're going to suffer worse. So you'd rather not change it, right? But it's actually a trick. It's the other way around. When you accept the suffering, right? It's just like childbirth. The more you resist the pain of it, the more it hurts. The more you go into it and face it, the less it hurts. And it's the same thing with this sort of approach, but you have to have a fortitude. You have to have a strength inside enough to say, it might be uncomfortable for a couple of weeks as I change over. I might have my parasites screaming at me, telling me they need the Doritos because they really need that MSG hit or whatever, right? But once you start to wean off of the drug part of the food, you'll find a new thing that you love. And that could be, you could run with that. You could take that into other avenues, right?
I for sure. I think any trick that takes you away for a little while, and then you go back, as you said, I used to eat all the bad foods. And now if I have, one of those potato chips, I immediately get a headache. Or like you say, if you smell the food I used to love eating, even the fast food here in Japan, that now I walk by those restaurants and my stomach will start turning. I won't get hungry anymore. I'll feel vomitous. Instead, now that my body's kind of weaned itself off of that. And so maybe, people need to take a pause, whatever it takes, a vacation, a run, a fast, a sleep, something different from whatever it is that's ailing them. And perhaps a big desire for healing has to be first, I would say, and willing to deal with the pains that come. Yeah.
And that's why I always say, write it down, or, make a goal, make an actual date with yourself. By this date, I would like to not eat Doritos anymore and not have beer anymore, or whatever it is, and make yourself try to achieve that. And then if you do, then celebrate it in some way. If I do this by this date, I will have my friends over and we'll, have a fun gathering, or whatever it is that's not, going to get you back into that. Like, oh, now I'm going to buy ice cream because I can, or whatever. Don't substitute one damaging thing for another. But find a positive reward system that works for you, because we do have that reptilian brain part of us, and you can use that to your advantage to like retrain yourself as you would a pet with a treat, like to go in a circle, roll over, here's your treat. You can sort of do that a little bit with yourself as well to get you clear of some of those bad habits and to feel like you've achieved something. And then reflect, like, look how far you've come. This is the thing that I had to actually stop myself and look at what I did, because I'm a high achiever type A, perfectionist type, and it was never enough. So I would do all these wonderful things, but I would never reflect and go, well, look what you've managed to do. I mean, pause for a moment and reflect on the achievements that you've been able to do in your life, and sit with that for a minute and feel good about yourself that you did that you could have chosen to sit on the couch. You could have chosen to complain about your life. You could have chosen way worse outcomes, but you didn't. You did that. And so find those things in your life that you can reflect on, say, you did your best there, or you did that. Rather than I would just move on. I would just be like, okay, what's the next thing? And then I was never happy, because the happiness is always fleeting. You can never be, if you were constant joy, you would die. I think that's actually an affliction in Chinese medicine, excessive joy. It's not natural. You have ups and downs, ebbs and flows in your existence. It's just how it is. But you can understand happiness when you see the fruits of your labors and acknowledge them. I had to force myself to do that, because I was so self-abating that I would think that was an egoic thing to do, to reward myself for actually achieving something. And I hated parties that celebrated my birthday or celebrated stuff. I was like, oh, this is awkward, and this sort of thing, like, it wasn't me, it was God or whatever. I'd always pass it off. But it's okay to be recognized for what you do, and you can't always expect everybody else to recognize. You have to recognize yourself for doing what you did and for achieving something. And it might not be anything to anybody else. I mean, the hardest thing for that person in that day might be just getting up and getting out of their pajamas. That for that person that day, that's a high achievement, right? So to acknowledge, like, you did that today, and that was hard for you to do, and acknowledge that you did it anyway. It was hard and you did it anyway. And congratulate yourself for that. And the next day it's going to get easier and easier as you do that. So otherwise we place weird expectations outwardly, and when they don't meet those expectations that we've manufactured, we feel depressed or let down, because we just were hoping that would happen. But that's just not reality. People are self-absorbed in their own existence mostly, especially if there's so much suffering. They don't have time to look up and look around and see what you've done and acknowledge what you've done. And the interesting thing is, the more you do that for yourself, the more you shift, you manifest when you do that, and you change frequency when you do that. And when you are self-acknowledging, what you start to notice is you start to do it to others. So I'm getting better and better as a mother, as acknowledging my own child at doing those things as well, because I did them for myself, right? Rather than, the critic, the internal critic, like, you didn't do that right, or, you didn't put that away, or what didn't you do? Well, okay, yes, they need to learn what they didn't do, but also they need to know that you notice the things they did do, and congratulate them and acknowledge them. And it's the same with your own inner child as well. You have to acknowledge that. So you're not egotistically, and I don't mean that in a like you're just being rude. I mean, your subconscious part of you will try to seek that out in your relationships, with others, to try to find validation in some way. And you might not know you're doing it. You're putting out cues for it. And usually it chases people away because it comes across as needy or pulling on someone. But if you don't need it at all, because you're getting it through your own inner works, then you start to attract that, because it will resonate the same with that vibration. So you will actually create where people acknowledge you and say those things to you. And as soon as I started to do that, that's when people would notice what I would do, right? And that was just an affirmation for me that I was doing the work properly, because that's a law of nature, that, that sympathetic resonance and the way that you manifest it from your own creation. So.
Sure. I mean, I guess a good way to look at it is you do get what you give, even what you give yourself. You get, if you're giving yourself, like you said, not a narcissistic way of saying I'm great, but more of an honest way of noticing your achievements. Well,
my spiritual teacher would say being selfish in the light, meaning what she meant by that is it's not selfish where you are being greedy or trying to pull or grab. It's being selfish, meaning your first goal is to nourish yourself and to fulfill yourself, to fill your own cup. And then when you fill your own cup, it overflows, and then others are served by that. So that's being selfish, what she calls selfish in the light. Yeah, not in the shadow. The shadow part is the ego part.
I think we're coming full circle to a lot of the religious reasons and things you talked about, originally. It's like, there's nothing wrong with being selfish. In fact, you need to be to make sure that you're looked after, you said, and you're healthy and you're mentally and physically and emotionally stable, so that you can do whatever it is you need to do to regain your own health from that perspective. So, I would agree, selfish in the light's a good way to look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. Well, perhaps we've come full circle in this discussion. I think we've touched base on our intent of how to heal the body, how to heal the mind, and a little bit on how to heal the spirit. And it seems, if you decide, from what I have gathered from this conversation, if you attempt any of those 3 points to begin, the rest will follow suit as a natural consequence of, wanting to heal yourself. If your mind is healed, it will tell you what to do. If your spirit is healed, it may whisper better ways to be. And if you heal yourself physically, well, you'll have the energy maybe to tackle the other two, which might be harder for some people.
Yeah. And also, if you're a religious individual or whatever your spiritual nature is, use it to your advantage. If you know how to pray or you like to pray, then prayer is a very potent aspect of your healing. But not just to pray and then stay with your habits, that are hurting you, because it's a two-way street. So if you're going to pray and you're going to ask the Creator for support, then you have to listen as well. And get quiet within yourself so you can hear when you're being directed to the answers to your prayers, right? Rather than just hoping that some salvation is going to come miraculously, or just you're going to wake up one day and it's all gone or something like that, which, not saying that doesn't happen occasionally, but for the most part, that's not realistic. But to use it, faith is a very powerful tool that you can utilize. But how I see faith is just faith in yourself, that there's a reason why you're here. It's not random, that you have a soul, that you have a connection to this earth, and that you are loved beyond measure and you are supported in everything that you do. And because of that, you have free will. You can make decisions for yourself. And if you were so divinely loved, then you wouldn't be told what to do. You wouldn't be pushed around, right? You would be able to become a spiritual adult and make decisions for yourself that are loving and that are supportive, in a grander scale. So, wherever everyone's at with that, then you use it to your advantage. But, but that faith is knowing that it's there, it's all within you, and you don't need to go to a white coat for, them to do things to you, or you don't need to be cut open to be fixed. God made you perfect as you are, which means everything that is inside of you it has a healing mechanism, and everything that's been put on the earth is there to serve all those healing mechanisms. And so everything is available to you as long as you want it. And having that faith that you'll find it is a really big part of the healing journey as well.
If you're selfish in the light as the sun's coming up where I am here in Japan through the window here and getting into my eyes. I mean, I do hear you. I have found with faith, one thing I'd like to just share here is that often enough you will get that free gift of movement towards health or towards stability or towards what have you for a moment, and then you'll be shifted back, so that you can get there yourself. Maybe the faith or your God or your spiritual religion will give you a moment where you have that clarity, and then it'll disappear. And it's not a bad thing, and it's not a curse. I think it's just, gives you a feeling, and then it gives you a path to walk on, something to strive towards after the fact. So, I have found that anyway. So, Amanda, this has been great. Thank you so much for this conversation. I will leave Amanda's links below, everything she mentioned, some of the videos, her video channel, her website, Yummy Doctor, and all of the amazing products and services that she has suggested, in some of the books as well. And if anybody has any questions or anything they'd like to share, please do so. And I'm happy to share with Amanda and anyone else the answers and questions as possible. Amanda,
thanks, Lorenzo.
Yeah, thank you so much again. I'll talk to you soon. And everyone, thank you for joining us. I love you all very much. I hope you can find your own healthy movements. And I think if you want to, there's nothing but resources out there to get off your bums and figure it out for yourself.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
Can't make me lie to my heart. No one tells me where I should start. Freedom first is what I say.